It has been more than 60 days since we reviewed Honor's X9a mid-range phone, and after a couple of software updates and a new black color edition, has Honor finally fixed its biggest problem with the X9a? The short answer is yes, they definitely fixed some of the issues we encountered more than a month ago. So currently, I'm on the Magic UI 6.1 that's based on Android 12. Although Honor improved the performance of the X9a across the board, including display and system enhancements, the biggest change or improvement here is the camera. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that there have been little to no changes to the video quality, meaning the X9a still records up to 1080p 30 frames only with mediocre quality. The photos and camera software are a different story, fortunately. Honor has fixed the stuttery camera UI, so finally switching between camera modes, the processing of photos, basically the UI experience in the camera app is smoother and better. It's definitely more than usable and enough for me to get rid of Gcam completely. As for the photos themselves, I'm glad Honor heard us. Starting with the main 64 megapixel sensor, the post-processing of Honor has finally caught up to the hardware. It's now a bit easier to get good looking shots with the main camera, so the photos you get have better dynamic range, better exposure, and slightly better sharpness compared to a month ago. Understandably, the dynamic range is a bit limited, with details in the brightest and darkest parts of the images getting completely blown out. Unlike Samsung's processing, the photos are a bit brighter than natural but with stronger contrast. The main camera does well in perfect lighting conditions though, but once you take it indoors, the colors and sharpness take a bit of a hit. Typically, getting close-up shots is the easiest way to get the best photo quality, but here, you lose a bit of the color spunchiness with the detail getting smoothed out. Additionally, the 64 megapixel mode really comes in handy if you want to get rid of smudgy foliage but at the expense of dynamic range. Overall, I would give the main sensor a solid 7 out of 10. When it comes to the ultra-wide sensor though, Honor did clean up the images, but it's still not a reliable alternative to the main sensor if you want to wider your subject frame. It's best to step back when using the main sensor instead of switching to the ultra-wide as much as possible. As for the macro sensor, it's basically a design cue at best, don't even bother using it. And lastly, the selfie camera is the second best camera here. Sure, its output is bright and all, but I think the photos here look good enough for social media use. Honor basically fixed the biggest issues with the camera here, and I applaud them for doing so. As for the rest of the device, it's pretty much similar if not identical to last month. You still get a well-rounded performance out of the Snapdragon 695 chip. Almost everything looks smooth outside gaming with a 120Hz display, and speaking of the display, it's still one of the best looking curved displays at this price point. I still love coming back to this display, whether it's gaming or watching a series on Netflix. Honor, however, added a game manager by adding a sidebar. Although the functions are limited, they nailed the basics here like brightness control, screen recording, multi-app window, and do not disturb mode. You can switch between two modes to either save battery or maximize performance in-game. However, I don't think the FPS counter shows an accurate representation of the game's frame rate. This isn't surprising to me since other FPS counters from other brands are also inaccurate. The battery performance of the X9a is still one of the best out there. However, I finally pushed its battery to its limit. Apparently, it only took having 5G turned on the whole day. But even then, I'm still getting impressive battery life, averaging 4 to 5 hours of screen time. But like I said before, if you're mostly on Wi-Fi, it's easy to get 2 days worth of use or up to 8 hours of screen time in a day. I do wish the 40-watt charger was a bit faster though, but that's just me getting spoiled by these 67 and 120-watt chargers from other expensive phones. So more than 2 months later, Honor X9a has gotten better. But in that span, we have seen several new phone releases. Its biggest competitor is the Redmi Note 12 Pro, which packs a significantly more powerful chip for gaming, a faster 67-watt fast charger, a stereo speaker setup, and a 50-megapixel Sony camera with OIS in tow. Although the display is a flat panel and the 256GB model costs 1,000 peso more, the Redmi competitor does offer more value than the X9a. But if what you're into is just a good overall performance with a curved display, I think the X9a is still worth considering over the Redmi Note 12 Pro. Call me crazy, but phones today are not about specs on paper anymore. I love the diversity we're seeing right now. Brands are practically offering phones for every type of consumer, and I think that's a good thing when we, the consumers, have more options. It's just a matter of deciding the kind of features we prioritize in a phone. So that's it for this one. Drop us over like you feel like supporting the channel, and as always, until the next one, stay safe.